Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being so prompt and on time. My name is Tim Mazur. I'm on the board of directors of IBECC. I've been involved for about 20 years, and I work in ethics and compliance at the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard here in the Boston area. So I am the Uber judge. We have three real judges who are here today. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, and then after that, I have a short paragraph to read, and then we'll get started. And as I mentioned to everybody, we have a short turnaround because a new team must start just like this at 9:15 Eastern. So with all due respect, I will keep everything to time. I'm timing it with my smartphone. And when we're done, we're going to shush you out, or whatever verb is appropriate. So let me begin by inviting Rachel to introduce herself.
Hi, thank you, Tim. It's an honor to be here today. My name is Rachel Frazier, and I teach ethics and professionalism in the College of Engineering at the University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida. And my business background is I started my own company. And since then, I've had a passion for helping STEM researchers actually approach innovation and entrepreneurship with integrity. So thank you very much for having me. And I can't wait to hear our first presentation.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Sonnen. I have been involved in IBECC since about 2009 and love IBECC. I think this is such an amazing opportunity, and it's great that we're all here in person. So my day job, I work in ethics and compliance for BAE Systems, which is a defense and aerospace company, and I am based out of New Hampshire.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Toby. This is my first year with IBECC, so bear with me. I currently work at Medtronic, which is based in Minnesota. However, I work in Massachusetts. I'm in the Data and Privacy Center of Expertise, and I have about 10 years of compliance and ethics experience.
Perfect. Okay, so in this part of the competition, you are taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the four judges. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who we are before you begin. So as soon as I stop talking, tell us what characters you are and what characters we are. You will have 25 to 30 minutes, so not more than 30 minutes. And you can stop at 24 minutes or 23, it's up to you. Just don't go past 30 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all three counts. During this time, teams will be uninterrupted. When you're finished, the judges will ask you questions in character for 20 minutes. During that Q&A, both you and the judges stay in character. After that Q&A, the judges will have 10 minutes to give you feedback outside of role playing. So at that point, we get to be who we really are. Some important things to keep in mind: the ethical aspects of your analysis are the most important part. However, these should be described in a simple, practical, common sense fashion. Using technical philosophical terminology or basing your arguments on religious or theological grounds will be considered a serious weakness. During this presentation, every member of the team must have some sort of speaking role.
Okay, so we are an ethics consulting group, consulting, and you are the board of directors for Nicola. So we want to thank you guys for being here today. We have a few recommendations for your company, and we want to start by introducing ourselves. So I'm Lauren Cobb.
I'm Sarah Brzozowski. I'm Andrea Bonon.
And I'm Megan. So again, we want to thank you for coming today. We have a few recommendations for your company, but we're going to start out by kind of laying out the situation that your company is currently in. So looking at this, we're going to start off with the problem that your company is facing. Then we're going to go into the legal and financial perspectives of your company and see where you stand in that area. And finally, we're going to go into the ethics piece and provide you guys with some recommendations for how we think your company should move forward. So starting off with our problem statement, your company has lost the trust of investors and has damaged their reputation after misleading and deceiving them through false claims prior to your IPO in June of 2020. Looking at this from a legal perspective, I want to first go through the false claims that your company has made that has gotten you in this situation. I then want to look at the former CEO, Trevor Milton, and his charges and sentencing due to this behavior. And then I want to look at the SEC settlement that you guys have gone through. Starting off with these false claims, you have made a few false claims about your technological advancements, starting with the Nikola One, which is a semi-truck and it's an electric vehicle.
Right, man.
You
Appreciate
said
it.
that
Yeah,
this
I just
was
realized I was over in that room and I was like, I should probably move over here because they could probably hear ambient noise if I was
You can probably make you beat
jumping
him.
about.
Hey, Mike, Mike,
Yeah. All right.
Michael?
I think we're good in there.
Okay, let's,
You're a judge, you have to stay.
oh, I was gonna mute him.
Oh, do you?
I don't think there's a way to. There's no way to mute him. Hey, Michael, quiet because we can hear you. You can't hear us.
He can't hear you.
Oh,
I put your thing on pause.
Hydrogen.
oh my God, sorry.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties. There's really no, what is it? Is it Zoom? Is it
Okay.
Yeah, it's Zoom, but it can only mute us.
And I
Okay.
just sent a
Use
message.
the,
I
I
just,
don't want to touch it.
This is very realistic, because this happens on real business meetings.
It
all right,
does.
you're ready to go.
Who-
And
Okay.
this way-
So
Oh,
who
right,
is
yeah.
speaking? Who are we trying to mute? Is
and
it-
they
Uh,
all sorted itself,
Yeah,
ready to go.
it's fixed,
Okay.
Robbie. It's fixed.
Okay,
Thank you.
good, sorry, okay, thanks.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so starting with the Nikola One, it was said to be a fully functioning electric semi-truck upon its showcase debut in 2016, sorry. And unfortunately, this was never a fully functioning vehicle, and the production completely stopped after its debut in 2016. Then going on to the Badger, which is a hydrogen electric vehicle, and it's a pickup truck. This was said to be made all with your company's parts and technology. However, this was not true. It was a partnership with General Motors, and the production of the truck stopped once General Motors pulled out of this deal, once all of these allegations were coming to light. Finally, your former CEO said that you were producing hydrogen as a company and doing so at a reduced cost. However, this was found to be untrue. Your company was never producing any hydrogen at all, let alone doing so at a reduced cost. Looking into some false claims about the sales and business, going back to your Nikola One, when it was released for pre-orders and reservations, it was said that all of these orders were going to be binding and that they represented billions in revenue. However, this was found to be untrue as 14,000 of your trucks were returned and much of the revenue was never even collected. Finally, going into your former CEO who made misrepresentations about the company to an individual in order to induce him to accept stock options as payment to buy this Utah ranch instead of with cash. And once it was revealed that a lot of this stock was boosted because of all these lies, the stock was essentially worth nothing. So going into your former CEO, he was charged for his false and misleading claims. So he stood for trial for fraud in the Southern District of New York in district court, and he was charged with 2 counts of securities fraud and 1 count of wire fraud in 2021. And during this time, he stepped down as his role of CEO, but later in 2022, he had an extra count of wire fraud added to his charges. And then looking into his sentencing, he was found guilty of 2 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of securities fraud, which made him sentenced to 4 years in prison and 3 years of supervised release. He was also required to forfeit his Utah ranch, and he paid a fine of $1 million for his actions. This is a quote that the prosecuting attorney said after he had been sentenced. He said, "Trevor Milton lied to investors again and again on social media, on television, on podcasts, and in print. But today's sentence should be a warning to startup founders and corporate executives everywhere. Fake it till you make it is not an excuse for fraud, and if you mislead your investors, you will pay a stiff price." Now going back to you guys in the SEC settlement that you had due to these false claims, you settled for $125 million in December of 2021. And for doing this, you must refrain from future violations and you must cooperate with any ongoing litigation and investigation. Unfortunately for you, this is mostly done with and you don't have to worry about this as you're fully paid out and your litigation, your investigation is coming to a close.
Then going into finance aspect of the situation, I'll be talking about your company's financial standing within the past few years, in addition to general information about market share and going into more detail and expanding upon the SEC settlement that Lauren introduced. So in terms of your financial standing, I chose the period from 2020, which is when you made your initial public offering, to year-end 2023. Before I kind of detail everything, I just like to point out that all of the reports and kind of sources that I consulted in my research, both revenue and gross profit, were missing from 2021. They just weren't reported anywhere. But regardless of that, your company does not have the most positive financial outlook, with gross profit and free cash flow decreasing year over year. Your company did initially turn over a profit at the initial public offering in 2020, but has since become unprofitable as of year-end 2023. And additionally, your total liabilities have increased. We can see there's a peak in 2022, largely due to the SEC settlement and that large sum of money that has to be paid. But it's just a sign that your company's taking on possibly more debt than it can handle within this given period. Based on Bloomberg market research, your closest competitor is the Bluebird Corporation. They are a school bus manufacturer that holds about 4% of the market share. The main similarities lie in that they are a company that manufactures and invests in alternative fuel school buses, and additionally have various government contracts, which is similar to your company's foregone deal with General Motors. And across that same period from 2020 to 2023, they have significantly better financials. Your company, in terms of turning over a positive profit, turning over positive revenue. We do see a dip in 2020 and 2021, largely due to the COVID-19 pandemic and schools closing and just decreased demand for school buses as a whole and consumer goods, but they were able to bounce back in the following 2 years. Then going into general information on market share, the US auto manufacturing industry was valued at about $104 billion at the end of 2023, with electric or alternative fuel vehicles representing about 8% of that market share. In terms of electric vehicles, Tesla holds majority within that industry, accounting for 55% of electric vehicles sold by the end of 2023. And then to the left, we just have a chart detailing majority share within the manufacturing market. As we can see at the top, General Motors holds majority share at just under 17%. Definitely would have been a very positive boost for your company should the deal with them have gone through. And then at the bottom, Tesla holds about 3% of the market, so kind of holding the minority in auto manufacturing as a whole, but are considered to be leaders within the electric vehicle industry. And then going into the SEC settlement, with the $125 million paid to the SEC, a fair fund was created pursuant to the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, in which the money that your company paid out to the SEC in this settlement is to be reimbursed and redistributed to the harmed investors. This is seen, like I mentioned, within the increase in total liabilities as well as stock-based compensation. That, as we can see, a bulk of these payments, like Lauren mentioned, were due within 2022, meaning this is a liability and a debt that your company has hopefully paid off, considering the due dates have been long past at this point. So you can now focus on paying other debt holders and concerning yourselves with other liabilities on the balance sheet.
So taking a look at the ethical component, this is a quick outline of what we'll be discussing. So we'll be taking a look at the role of the company's founder and CEO, Trevor Milton. We'll then take a look at the whistleblower and how they brought these different fraudulent accusations to light. We'll take a look at the impact that this unfortunate situation had on your company's stakeholders. And finally, we'll discuss our proposed solutions for how to repair and restore your company's reputation. So your current mission statement is pioneering solutions for a zero emissions world. Your company also believes that they are made by and made for those who lead. So there's a heavy emphasis on leadership and innovation within the company. So we wanted to take a look at what we believe the role of CEO should be within a company and what it should not be. The first point we have is establishing a healthy workplace culture. So they should really make sure that all employees feel safe and secure in their work environment. They should also act as a role model for the organization and set the tone. So that's how they plan to achieve their goals, if they plan to act ethically, etc. They should also seek and implement advice from their board of directors. A major point we want to make is that there should be non-duality between the board of directors and the C-suite. This means that the chair of the board of directors and the CEO of the company, or any person on the C-suite for that matter, is not interlinked. So there are two separate identities, and the board of directors has no ties to the company. It is important to note that there is non-duality on the board now, but it's something to keep in mind going forward. The CEO should also ensure that other organizational leaders are acting appropriately. So they should really make sure that the rest of the C-suite is keeping to their ethical mission and acting appropriately. And then they do also carry the responsibility to be a good corporate citizen and carry corporate social responsibility so that the overall competitive landscape is ethical. Touching upon what they should never do is act unethically, abuse their autonomous power that their title can give them, and they should also never implement illegal organizational actions. So taking a look at your company's CEO and founder, Trevor Milton, he did found the company in 2014. He was the executive chairman of the board until the 2020 ethical crisis came to light. So this means that there was duality in the company and that he did wield a lot of power because there was a lack of checks and balances between the board of directors and the C-suite. So he just took advantage of his power and ran with it. As a result, he was worth about $3.1 billion at the company's peak, showing just how much he benefited off of at the expense of others, I should say. In late 2020, there was a whistleblower who provided statements about the fraud going on within your company. They did go on to contact Hindenburg Research, which was a group of short sellers for your company. This is so critical because short sellers make money when a stock price decreases. And if there was going to be fraudulent accusations coming to light, this means that the stock price was inevitably going to decrease. And then taking a look at the impacted stakeholders as a result of this fraudulent scheme going on, we have the investors, General Motors, the employees of the company, and Hindenburg Research. The main group that was really negatively affected were the investors. There were four kinds. There were angel investors, equity investors, and venture capitalists. Common shareholders were also affected, but not quite as much since they acquired stock right after the company's initial public offering. General Motors was unfortunately affected as well, since they did obtain about 11% of the company, and this was shortly before the fraudulent accusations came to light.
So as my team members have laid out, your company has been through a very big ethical crisis, but we believe we have proposed some solutions to get your company back on track. So the number one problem that we believe you had in the past was with your CEO, Trevor Milton. He was not acting ethically in his position of power, but since then, Stephen Gursky, he has done a great job taking over as your new CEO. He's maintained great leadership. He has over 30 years of experience, and we believe that he is going to be a great asset to your company. One of our recommendations would be to issue a public apology for all my findings and research when Trevor Milton was your CEO. There was no issued apology to your past investors or consumers, which you lost the trust of. So we believe that issuing a public apology with your new CEO, if that be so, we would recommend you put that into place to just earn back the trust of your investors and consumers going forward. In addition, we would recommend outline a payback plan. This would be a 5-year plan talking about how we would ethically and financially recover. This would probably take more than 5 years looking at it now, but being optimistic, it would only take 5 years, and we have done our due duty through our SOC settlement, paying back our investors, but morally as a company, we want to reimburse their financial losses. In addition, we would also recommend you put on a press conference per se. This would be with your board of directors, your new CEO, and we invite you to invite back your former investors of the company and talk about your 5-year plan that we would recommend you put into place, your rebranding strategies, and just your company moving forward. And then we would recommend you open the floor to your former investors to ask them any questions about what we can do better as a company, what you can do better as a company, and what they want to see from us going forward. Moving into another recommendation, we would recommend you have an ethical committee. This would be a new position we would recommend you put on your board of directors. This would be the VP of Ethical Affairs. The VP of Ethical Affairs would look over 3 internal members as well as 3 external members. This way you would have an inside perspective on your company's ethics as well as an outside perspective. In addition, we would also recommend you implement an ethical contract of rights. This would be certain guidelines for your company, looking at the ethics in more detail. And a couple of main points that we recommend you add to the ethical contract of rights is prevention on crisis management, risk management, and certain guidelines for social media and things like that. In addition, your guidelines for social media, we would also recommend, in addition to your VP of Ethical Affairs, we would also recommend you add an independent board member who specializes in rebranding and marketing. This would be your VP of Marketing. She would work on a rebranding strategy to move forward with your company and want to shed a new light on Nicola. In addition to the VP of Marketing, we would also recommend you add a focus group. This would be an outside perspective who can look at your different social media campaigns and promotions and advertising for your new products to make sure they are aligning ethically with your new campaign. In addition, we would also recommend under your ethical contract of rights to add a subsection for your social media. This would have strict guidelines for posting. One of those guidelines we would recommend you add is another safety and security test for your products before they can be promoted in addition to traditional testing.
Looking ahead for 5-year financial projections, just as a note, I did use a constant growth year-over-year growth rate just to streamline projections a little bit more, but we can expect a positive and increasing growth rate, or at the very least a different growth rate year-over-year. But overall, we can see an improvement in financial standing for the next 5 years from 2024 to year-end 2028. As we can see, your company will not be hitting their break-even point given these projections within the next 5 years, but we can definitely see kind of currently as the market's trending, definitely within the next 10 to 15 years, you will reach that break-even point, hopefully sooner rather than later. Kind of 2 points on this where the kind of lack of profitability isn't the biggest concern per se, considering a large majority of electric vehicle or alternative fuel companies are currently still in their research and development phases and are not seeing the profit. I believe the only current public electric vehicle company that's investing in its own parts and manufacturing its vehicles in its entirety that's generating a profit is Tesla, and they're kind of, like I mentioned earlier, kind of leaders in the market. They do have their own issues in terms of some of the self-driving vehicles malfunctioning and not performing up to their personal and kind of public standards. So definitely that leaves room for your company to enter in a niche, and with investments in research and development can outperform Tesla. Additionally, there's a changing sentiment overall, largely in the government and political sphere, toward electric vehicles and sustainability as a whole, both on the federal and state level. I know, for example, in the state of California, their governor is making a big push toward having all consumer and commercial vehicles be fully electric by 2035. And just different legislation that's being passed, or at the very least is in Congress and in discussion, can definitely make room for your company to excel and kind of meet our expectations, have a greater year-over-year growth, and reach that break-even point and generate profit within maybe that 5 to 10 year range instead of the 10 to 15. And additionally, within our repayment plan, within the whole ethical crisis, investors lost a combined $660 million. Like we mentioned earlier, your settlement with the SEC only covered $125 million, which still leaves a $535 million difference that we think investors should be reimbursed for. So we recommend that when your company reaches a certain profitability margin, or at the very least has improved financials, we recommend that you create a separate dividend payment in order to refund and reimburse these harmed investors. Given the 5-year financial projections, we do understand that this is more of a long-term solution, something that will take an extended period of time, but we recommend this with the goal and intent of reimbursing your harmed investors, in addition to attracting more socially minded and ethical investors who will appreciate the effort that your company is putting into repairing investor relations, in addition to owning up to past mistakes, and that by doing this, they're moving forward.
So as I touched on earlier, creating that new role of VP of Marketing, we would recommend you put a new campaign out to attract more ethically minded investors and just repair your company's reputation as a whole. And through this, we believe it'd be beneficial to revise your mission statement a little bit. So we propose this new mission statement, which would be ethically producing solutions to strive for a zero emissions world. So in conclusion, if an organization does not change their unethical ways, they will always be seen as an unethical organization. So we believe that with our recommendations, you can repair your relationship with your investors and gain back their trust, as well as repair your own company's reputation. We think that right now the EV industry needs a hero, and that you guys can be that hero. And we want to thank you for your time, and look forward to any questions.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So my first question, and then after I'm done, the other three can jump in, is you gave a lot of valuable information, but my question is, what makes this issue an ethical issue?
So I think the major point here is that the organization did profit off of lies and deceit. So they had a situation, they were not transparent about it, they were not truthful, and it was fraudulent. So as we stated in our presentation, Trevor Melton was worth about $3.1 billion at the company's peak. So this shows just how much he profited at the expense of others. In terms of the business world, when you ask investors to invest in your company, you're really asking for their trust and for them to believe in you. So once you violate that trust, it's hard to repair and build back. So I think the major issue here is that they violated trust and really profited off of lies and deceit.
Excellent. Rachel, do you have something to ask?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Tim. And thank you, team, for the presentation. We appreciate your insight. We're in a position to actually provide a return sooner than 10 to 15 years, turn a profit for then, right? So that we can actually repay our investors and kind of smooth over relations with them. So how is it that you see to rebuild our relationships with suppliers so that we can speed up this time to profit? Or in other words, maybe more specific to your solution, how is your solution going to impact our supply chain and production issues, right, that are related to the damaged partnership with GM?
I would say that it's definitely along with our solutions, when we invite people back to kind of show them our new plan for the company, we could definitely invite them back as well so they know our plan for the future and are more likely to want to supply us once more. Has anything else to add?
And then I think additionally, in terms of once we reach that profit margin, we can invest more heavily in our own research and development, and rather than having that partnership, which obviously would have been beneficial, kind of, not to say resting on our own laurels, but kind of relying on ourselves and building up our own personal research and development, and making sure the products that we're manufacturing are kind of airtight before we pursue another partnership. It could be with General Motors, it could be with another majority manufacturer. I think kind of the universal trend going on within auto manufacturing is that all of these majority manufacturers all have some kind of either hybrid vehicle or a subset of fully electric vehicles that they're investing in, largely due to kind of the more social ethical push for increased sustainability that I mentioned earlier. So definitely, I think the goal should be to improve, for Nikola to improve upon themselves, and then we can consult with an outside manufacturer and partner with them.
Yes, in addition to what Sarah said, your new CEO, he was the chairman of the board for General Motors in years past, so he does have some good connections through that. And we believe with after repairing trust with that, possibly opening up a partnership with General Motors again is possibly in the works because he has experience in that company as well.
All right, thank you very much. And I'll pass it on to the other judges now.
Thank you. So my question has to do with your ethical contract. I saw that up there and you touched upon it very briefly, but I was wondering if you could flesh out a little bit more. Who is this contract with? And how is this contract, what do you suggest we put in this contract?
Sure. So one of our main issues is crisis management. So we would have a area first out of crisis management, your plan, what would happen if this were to happen again? Because you did not really have a plan in place to of what would happen if the scenario were to happen. So crisis management, number one, risk management, number two, talking about more of your social media guidelines. You did have problems in the past promoting products before they were even running or ran altogether. So we want to make sure that there is proper testing being done to make sure all of your products being promoted are fully functioning vehicles and maintaining up-to-date measures on safety and security. Those are just a few guidelines we would touch on. We would have more research with research development and things like that, but those are two main points that we want to touch on our ethical contract of rights. It would be within our own company as well.
And kind of building upon that, the contract of rights would be within the company and with the board, between the board of directors, and the company as a whole. If we take a top-down kind of management approach, what the C-suite does reflects upon all of the employees and the company as a whole. So in this situation, the actions of one individual painted the entire company and all of these employees in such a bad light. So kind of having a relationship established where the C-suite can be held accountable for their actions and kind of can follow certain guidelines to ensure that they, even if they run into different issues, that they're acting ethically and can avoid any negative situations and kind of in their responses avoid any negative situations.
Thank you.
Okay, great job. In coming up with your recommendations, did you look at what other companies have done in the wake of similar ethical issues and fraud by a CEO, and what lessons have been learned from that?
Sure. So one of our recommendations that we made was creating a new ethics affairs VP position. Our competitor, as Lauren stated, Bluebird Corporation, they implemented a corporate governance board, which is 3 internal members as well as 3 external members. So we kind of mirrored that approach, and we believe that that would be a good implementation looking over the ethics of our company moving forward.
To add also, anytime a company is in any kind of scandal, I feel like their first thing or the first PR recommendation is to always issue that apology. So definitely incorporating that into our plan, I feel like it's really important, especially since Milton really didn't show any remorse for his actions. I think that really hurts the company's reputation overall. So making sure to part ways with Milton and showing that the company is remorseful, I think is super important.
Yeah, we believe that there's a lot of ways when companies are in the fire of a scandal, there's a lot of ways you can go for it. You can run from it, or you can be truthful and honest about it. We believe that if your new CEO comes forward and shows remorse, it will earn back the trust of former investors and attract more ethically minded investors to come forward later.
Additionally, just having the change in CEO of having Trevor Melton removed and having Stephen Gursky step in, I think that's already a step in the right direction for your company in terms of kind of going back to the top-down management approach. We're changing the person who's supposed to lead the company. As Maeve has mentioned, he's been doing a great job. And I think with our recommendations, he can continue to move the company forward and kind of progress past this situation and further develop the company and move it forward.
So here in the United States, we're going to have the pleasure of a presidential election in the fall. The two gentlemen running against each other kind of represent opposing views. Would either of those be helpful to the Nicola's industry and business, or worse?
So in the Biden administration currently, they are working on passing a US transportation, basically
And an infrastructure act. in
Yeah.
addition to that.
yes, which will dedicate, I think it's $5.4 billion to different forms of transportation, and one of them is promoting more electric vehicles. So I know that they're giving money to creating EV charging stations. They're kind of pushing legislation to help incentivize companies to make electric vehicles. So we think that definitely that administration would help our company and incentivize people to invest in our company more.
And I think additionally with the past Trump administration, even though sustainability wasn't his super main focus and not really something that he publicly supported, one of his main focuses within his administration was bringing production back into the US. Nikola produces entirely within the United States, so should he win the election, kind of assuming that more legislation will be passed to continue to bring production back to the United States could also benefit Nikola as a whole.
Rachel?
Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate you elaborating a little bit more about what the ethics contract is going to be. And you keep mentioning this public apology. That's probably one of the most important things we can do, but how else has your team thought about how we might communicate this dedication to rebuilding trust with investors? Because I think public apology is very surface, right? That's very much on the outside showing, but there are things that have to go deeper within our organization. And y'all brought in this idea of the VP, right? The VP that's going to sit in ethics. Can you describe a little bit more how that person plugs into the existing org structure in a way that this can't happen again? Because remember, it was the CEO the first time. And then how else might we communicate the idea that, we're moving forward with integrity to our investors?
Sure. So the new VP of Ethical Affairs, this was not a position obviously that you had before. So just making sure everyone is acting properly within their positions of power, not abusing their power, maintaining good leadership roles, and just acting morally and ethically in their role for the company. In addition, talking about integrity for the press conference that I said per se that we're going to recommend you host, inviting back former investors. This is where we would recommend you bring back. You would bring the new VP of Ethical Affairs and the VP of Marketing, and they would talk about moving forward how they would propose their integrity going forward and move forward as a company. And it would open the floor to former investors to talk about what they think we did wrong in the past, what we can do for them moving forward, what they want to hear from us. And we believe creating that open and honest conversation is going to create a lot of transparency within the company, which your company needs right now.
And in addition to that, I think that you're already on the right track. We can say that we're going to apologize and do these things all we want, but we really have to walk the walk and do it. So we believe that you're already on the right path with your new CEO and making sure there's non-duality within the board. And again, the VP of Ethical Affairs will have 3 internal members on that committee and also 3 external members who can all hold each other accountable as well. So making sure that we can apologize all we want, but we also have to take action and fix what we did.
And then additionally, our VP of Ethical Affairs position would work very closely with the board of directors, considering the board of directors is meant to be oversight for the C-suite. So kind of adding in that member both within the company and kind of taking an external position of giving kind of a bird's eye overview of the company to hold our C-suite accountable and kind of make sure they're making the right decisions and acting in an ethical manner.
I think to quickly add or summarize, transparency is key. So among those things, I think really emphasizing what we're doing. So even though the ethical contract of rights is between the C-suite and the board of directors, showing that to the public and investors is really helpful to make sure that this is what we're doing, to hold ourselves accountable. I think also posting, on social media and to the public saying these are the guidelines before we can release a product, and showing that it has to undergo all of this testing to make sure that it is real and not a faux pas. I think that's really important, and just a way to be transparent and show what we're doing to rebuild the company.
Okay, and a real quick follow-up with this idea of transparency. It is key, right? So the idea that you're going to have this ethics committee, that's great, because that could be on the website, people could see that. But what about the actual agreement or pledge or creed or contract or whatever this looks like? How transparent is that going to be in terms of external to the organization?
Right, so I think to start developing that new mission statement and adding the ethical term in there, I think that's one way to really emphasize the change that we're undergoing, and also showing that we want to incorporate ethics. I think in terms of the ethical contract, that's something we could definitely post and be transparent about. So just definitely the agreement that everyone is undertaking and what they're expected to follow. There's no reason for that not to be public. So I think that is something that we could post and showcase and show exactly the guidelines everyone's expected to follow.
This could also be this could be like a press release that we could put out within our website, and also invite people to our press release, like the public, who could report on this as well.
Do we have to confirm?
We have 3 minutes, 45 seconds for the two.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I'll just ask one quick question. You haven't touched a lot upon the employees. So can we talk a little bit about, what are your thoughts about the employees? How do we rebuild trust? How do we ensure that they're part of the ethical contract as well? Because obviously it was our CEO, who did the bad behavior, but I assume we want this culture of ethics throughout the entire organization.
I think having a new board of directors in place from Trevor Milton and his board of directors, none of those members are on our current board of directors. In addition to, like we've said, having a brand new CEO has been a step in the right direction of kind of changing oversight and leadership within the company. In addition, no one on the previous C-suite is currently in the C-suite, so kind of changing the top level leadership, I think, has been a positive step. Obviously, trust was also lost within employees within the company in this whole issue. That the contract of rights can also be between the employees and the C-suite of kind of, I think some people would have the view of employees might not be responsible for the actions of the C-suite, but definitely the C-suite's actions reflect upon the employees and the rest of the company. So I think completely having that change, promoting a culture of the current C-suite owning up to past mistakes, even if they weren't the ones to implement them and do it in the first place, I think is also another positive step. And just within the ethical contract, kind of having an agreement of sorts that maybe employees can also, if they have any concerns, they can bring it up, and just having that relationship of the employees can now hopefully trust the C-suite, and kind of through their actions, through our recommendations, that can hopefully kind of promote a better culture within the company and that trust can be rebuilt once again.
Do I have time to add on to that? Okay. Just to add on to that, the CEO or the former CEO definitely had a bad impact on the employees. He would make these wild claims about something that the company was going to do and then be like, you need to get this done by then. And it's completely outlandish to think that they would be able to do that. And that's why a lot of them came forward in the Hindenburg research report. And they were the one who exposed a lot of the things. So I think that, again, the change in CEO and the change in administration will really help the employees gain back that trust, because the trust wasn't broken by the current CEO and the current C-suite. It was broken by the last.
To wrap up a little bit, as a whole, before you would implement this ethical contract of rights, you could possibly have a sit down with all of your employees to say, hey, this is something that we're considering implementing. Do you have any feedback for us on how we can earn back your trust moving forward? And open that conversation of what they would want to see in the ethical contract of rights if they would like to add anything. So having an open conversation within your company before bombarding them with this new piece of information would be crucial.
Yes, so to add on, it actually is a follow-up to what you were talking about. Would you recommend implementing a whistleblower hotline perhaps to help build trust among employees and demonstrate that action is taken when people do bring up concerns?
I think that's a great idea. I feel like especially people will feel more of a duty to come forward if they are kept anonymous. And yeah, I think that's a great idea for hotline.
Okay, all set. Congratulations. You can breathe. Excellent. So we now will go right up till 9 o'clock. All 8 of us can step out of character and be ourselves. So the 4 judges are going to give you some feedback. Please understand that in our feedback, especially the positive things we say are a part of our evaluation to see who wins the competition. But some of our constructive feedback, not everything that might be said loses points. But the reality is all 4 of us are persons who have actually been in your shoes, meeting with boards of directors in real life, doing what you just did. And so all 4 of us have personal opinions about the best ways to do this and not. So we might share a number of things to be helpful and valuable for you, but when it comes to judging the competition, we only judge you on the things that you were specifically told that we would judge. So why don't we start with Maria?
Sure. Okay, so first of all, you guys did an amazing job. You were all extremely poised. Everyone was well versed in the issue and your solution. So amazing. I know it's hard to get up there like in person because we've been virtual for the last couple of years. It's been a very different experience, but you guys did such an amazing job. And I noticed you're like some of your 2026 graduation, that blows me away that you're so early in your careers in education and you're so poised. So fabulous job. On that point, I think the one piece of kind of constructive feedback I would give, and it's really hard. It's very, very hard, but be really careful about the you guys. I heard you guys a lot, and you guys is a very, very informal. Like if you're actually presenting to a group of even directors, managers, forget about a board of directors, you're going to want to be careful about using those types of familiar ways of speech. So I think the solution that you came up with was really unique. I really liked the idea of the ethical contract. I think there is something really powerful about a contract where you sign your name to something. And I really liked at the end where you were saying like bring the employees into it and their feedback. I thought that was an excellent addition. I believe in this Q&A portion, you guys did such a, see, I just did it. You all, you, the team did, see, I did it. The team did such a great job thinking on your feet, especially, you know, when Tim brought up a political question, you know, you probably didn't think when you were coming here today, Trump or Biden would be mentioned, but I think your answers were so quick on your feet and spot on and smart. So fabulous. That is great. I think in terms of your solution, I think the one thing that I probably would have wanted you to flesh out a little bit more is that role of that VP. I think Rachel was trying to ask questions about where that person would sit, who they would report to, you know, what power they would have, what ability. So one of the things I think it's important for you to know is that the person that somebody reports to in an organization is extremely important because we all answer to our bosses. They sign our paychecks, they write our performance reviews. So thinking about who that person would actually report to, whether it's both the solid and the dotted line, I think is really important. And then also to her point, I think fleshing out a little bit more what type of program you would put in place, an ethics program for employees is really, it would have been a great addition. But other than that, I thought you all did such a fabulous job and I really appreciate it.
So Caitlin, 3 minutes.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. I would say there were times where your voices were a little bit soft. So maybe speaking up, you know, if you're in I mean, this is kind of difficult room where it's echoey, but just keep that in mind. Eye contact, I noticed a little bit of like looking at the ceiling as if you were thinking at times, some more than others. So just maybe better eye contact with the board of directors. And yeah, just being mindful along the same lines of what you said about like the formality of your language, trying to keep the likes and ums to a minimum. I know I struggle with that.
I do it all
all the time. So, you know, there's no perfection, but just strive to keep that to a very minimum, you know, when you're in a professional setting. And as for your solutions, I really like them. And yeah, I definitely think we need a little bit more fleshing out of, you know, not just at the leadership level, but more like how it's going to flow out throughout the organization over, you know, the coming years. And yeah, I think that those are my main things, but you guys did a great job. And
Rachel, 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. So again, totally agree with what everybody said so far. Y'all did a great job. One of the things that I will say is that being on Zoom, I could understand what y'all are saying. The slides were easy for me to look at. So you did a great job being able to accommodate Zoom. Of course, y'all are probably well versed in that as you've been through school during a time where we've been online. But there are a couple opportunities that your team has to demonstrate that you understand the link between ethical violations and issues and the impact that it can have on organizational, operational issues, financial issues, legal issues, right? And so what I mean by that is, you know, we heard Marie and Caitlin, you know, hit on a couple of them, this idea of pulling in all of these pieces. You talked about the culture, right? To readjust and establish a ethical culture. And in terms of that, that's really where you have the opportunity. We can do this by what we're doing with employees, what we're doing with people internal to the organization, and what we're doing with people external to the organization. And I think that that's where you really need to make 2 very clear pathways. Because, you know, when I was asking about the transparency issue, if you take a look at some of the most ethical engineering firms, and let's just consider Nikola to be an engineering firm because it's in the automotive industry. Literally, there are codes of conduct on the website, right? And so that doesn't just go to people internal, like the employees, right? We hit on employees. That also goes to people external. It hits on partners, right? So it sets expectations between the two organizations with partners, with investors. And I think that that's really where transparency actually can blossom into something that has an opportunity to make a bigger impact. And it also will let you demonstrate the ability to make these connections. Because at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is make sure that we have a recipe for conduct instead of a recipe for misconduct, right? So just something to think about, but great job. I really appreciated the thought I could tell that you put into your presentation and into your solution.
Okay, perfect. I wish I had more negative things to say to balance out the ladies, but so first of all, you're Laura, right? And your first name is? Sarah. And the third person?
I'm Andrea.
Andrea, okay. And the fourth person?
Maeve.
Maeve?
Maeve, yeah.
Okay, great. So let's see. So overall, first of all, very nice balance, excellent. That I really felt like you were a team, and all four of you were contributing kind of quote unquote equally. So that's awesome. Andrea, can you go back to the early slide that talked about market share? So I, as Maria knows me very well, I picked up on the you guys thing. So it sounds like 3 of the 4 of us did. So it's great that you're getting that message. Am I wrong, or where it says Toyota Motor, is that a misspelling?
Yeah, sorry
Okay.
about that.
Yeah, try to avoid misspellings because there are awful people in the world like me who get distracted. There was a moment when Sarah referred to the research that she had done, and she said, I did this research. You are never, ever an I. You are only a we. You're only a team. Let's see, so as I go through, so obviously it was excellent time-wise. You came in at 21 minutes. I'm a fan of using as much of the 30 as you can, but there's no reason to speak for more minutes than you need. And I have taken away points from people who have spoken only in the teens. So you're perfectly good at 21, because it's much more important to never go past 30. I also had it down that for Laura, I couldn't hear at the beginning. So in the same spirit, I think Caitlin said, as you look into the eyes, look for whether or not everyone in the room can hear you, and if not, kind of bring it up. And yeah, do be sensitive. We've got air conditioning going in the background. And then Sarah, Sarah, you were looking up a lot, and I don't know if you were maybe looking at the camera because of Rachel. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna scream at Sarah, and then I'm like, oh, she might be doing that for Rachel. So, but Caitlin's right. Eye contact is amazing. Fantastic that you made the effort to remain in character, even when we got interrupted by the IT guy at the beginning, which I'd love to say was planned, but wasn't. You really shined. You did, as the fellow judges said, you did a very nice balanced job. The agenda at the beginning, fantastic. The little thing at the bottom, I love, because we are important business people who have a million things on our mind. So the fact that you give us an agenda and say, this is what we're going to talk about, this is what we talked about. And even when Andrea gave a mini agenda just for the ethics part, fantastic, because we get distracted. And so you need to make sure like we're kindergartners, that we have to refocus. I liked when one of you said, you know, can I add? Like the second time you said, can I add to what Sarah said? But there was a moment when Sarah kind of corrected Laura on something. I like that because it means that, first of all, you guys aren't overly sensitive to stuff like that. And secondly, Sarah wouldn't do that unless she cared that us, the audience, are getting exactly the most accurate information possible. So that was good. Okay, phone, stop. I get it. I'm very happy Caitlin asked the question because I was going to say, can you give any examples of other corporations who have done a repayment plan and it worked, like they were happy that the investors maybe said, screw the money to us in the repayment, we want you to take that money and reinvest it so I can be a multimillionaire 10 years from now instead of you just repaying me that stuff. I wondered if we're going to be sharing how much of what you shared, like the ethical plan of action or whatever it was called, are we going to share that on our website with the public, or is that a private document? But the thing is, these three judges are more important than the Uber judge, and so it was better that they got to ask the questions instead of me asking bots. Yeah, and I was very interested in whether or not we were going to be able to remain competitive against our competitors with all the nice things that you were suggesting we do. So congratulations. What a nice way to start off the day. And Andrea, your answer, so I guess it was to my question. My very first question was spot on, and a number of people blow that. So that was good. Are we having fun? Okay. I think we have mimosas and tequila.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I just want to say again, I'm just so impressed by how poised you are, and I could actually have imagined you being in front of a very important group of people. So it's excellent. If this is your future, if this is what you want to do in the future, work in consulting, you have what it takes to do that. So excellent job.